Winston Churchill. This is an exact replica that we had made, and we actually had to call the chief historian of the White House and get them to send us photographs of it and measurements of it so we could recreate it for this Oval Office. This is what the Oval Office looked like when George W. Bush was in it. It is dramatically changed, but the main thing that has changed since Barack Obama was in it is that bust, which was a gift from the British, our closest ally and friend. This was a gift from the British as well, the Resolute desk. That bust was taken out and boxed up and shipped back to England. It was a gift after the attacks of 9/11. It was how it was done that bothered me and confused me. It was boxed up after the British Prime Minister said, no, Mr. President, that's a gift from the British people. And Barack Obama said, no, well, we don't need it. And he said, well, you put it in a museum. It was a gift from the British people. And what happened next was the Prime Minister left and Obama had it boxed up and shipped back. This is the key to the show tonight. This is where things for me, when they took it out of the Oval Office and they shipped it back to England, that's when things got confusing. That's where our journey begins. The only guy who I think gets it, and the key to him getting it is he was born in another country. And we've had him on the show several times before. But this is the only man I think that truly understands Obama, because he had something most Americans don't, an anti-colonialist upbringing. This guy meant something to Dinesh DSouzas as a kid. This guy played a role. Director, co-writer Dinesh DSouzas. The new film is called 2016. It explains Barack Obama. I didn't know this was the key, but I knew something was really, really wrong.
Well, this man, Winston Churchill, is known to most Americans as the great fighter of the Nazis. We will fight them on the beaches. We will never surrender. And that's why Churchill is a bipartisan hero in America. But when I was growing up as a kid in Mumbai, in Bombay, we learned more about the other Churchill. And this was the Churchill who, from his young years, was a colonialist. He rode with the colonial armies in Afghanistan. He was with Lord Kitchener in the Sudan, a famous battle called Omdurman. Later, he became the colonial secretary in charge of all the colonies. Now, interestingly, with Churchill, when he met Gandhi, India's anti-colonial leader, Churchill said, I will not be the prime minister to preside over the liquidation of the British Empire. And in the 1950s, when Obama's father was growing up, there was an anti-colonial uprising in Kenya. Obama's father was arrested, his grandfather was detained, and it was Winston Churchill who had been re-elected as Prime Minister of Britain. He sent in the British troops that crushed the anti-colonial uprising in Kenya. So Obama has good reason to hate this guy.
What did this say to you when you heard this story?
Well, the Churchill incident actually came to me after I had started thinking about the anti-colonialism of Barack Obama. The reason I got onto that topic was I started almost casually reading his autobiography, Dreams from My Father.
Keyword, from.
From my father, right? He's not talking about his father's dreams. These are the dreams that he, Obama, got from his dad.
Right.
And as I was thumbing through that book, I realized that this is not about Selma. It's not about the civil rights movement. Obama or his father didn't sit at segregated lunch counters. They're not descended from slaves. This is a third world story that moves from Hawaii to Indonesia to Kenya. And I realized, you know, Obama's talking about rickshaws, lepers, you know, kids crossing the road, the smells of funny types of food. And I'm like, wow. That's what I grew up. That's the familiar sounds and smells of the Bombay I was raised in. So as I began to think about Obama's ideology, when this incident came up, it became a sort of a test for me, a confirmation that I was on the right path, because to me the strength of a theory is this. Can it explain facts that no other theory can explain? So people will say, Obama's a Muslim, Obama's a socialist, Obama's this, Obama's that, but this theory, this fact, the Churchill bust, the anti-colonial theory explains, and all other theories fall short. So to me, it was an eye-opener.
Right. But it is, the anti-colonialists, I mean, his father and his mother were Marxist as well.
Well, remember that anti-colonialism burst on the world in the 50s and 60s, and the Cold War was raging, and for all these newly independent countries, they wanted to be anti-Western, anti-British. America had been coming to the forefront. So how do you be anti-Western? Who was America's enemy? The Soviet Union. So it became natural for all these guys to say, we're against these guys. We embrace the Soviets. We embrace socialism. We go the other way. And so Nehru went that way, Sukarno in Indonesia, Nkrumah in Ghana. This was the world I grew up in. My father felt this way. My grandfather felt this way. So when I read Barack Obama felt this way, I'm like, that's the way the world was for a lot of these people. Yeah, there are even conservatives who will say of Obama, you know, he's just a bungler. He's an amateur. He's an incompetent. He's never. They don't. So their point is he keeps getting results opposite to what he intends.
That's insane.
And I just step back and say, maybe he's getting the results he does intend.
Right.
That's an easier way to understand a man. So I think the big error with Obama on the right and the left is we all think we're having this policy debate among people who share goals. We all want America to be prosperous. We all want America to be strong. We all want America to be number one. We're just debating how to get there. The message of this film is, wait a minute, there may be one guy, and he happens to be the guy, who is outside that consensus, and for good reason, has a very different agenda. Well, Barack Obama's not a sort of traitor, or he hates America or anything like that. He subscribes to an ideology that sees America as the rogue nation in the world. What is this ideology? It's kind of a third world anti-Americanism, anti-colonialism. The basic idea here is that the whole ship of the world has gone wrong side up. And it's gone wrong side up for 500 years because one civilization, Europe, America, has conquered the rest of the world and stolen its stuff. That's the theory, that these rich countries only became rich by taking the wealth of the poor countries. So Obama, it has a global vision, and that is, I want to set the ship of the world right. And what that means is that America has to go down so the rest of the world can come up. Remaking America, that was his phrase. And as I listened to that, I thought to myself, how do you remake America without unmaking America? You got to take down the America that there is to put something new in its place. So now, weirdly, I think from Obama's point of view, he's doing what's good for America. It's almost like he's the coach of the Lakers, and he thinks it's really bad for the Lakers to keep winning. Why? Because it's making them arrogant, it's making them greedy and selfish and exploitative. It would be really good for the Lakers to start losing. So he's calling plays for the Lakers to lose. Now, if we're the Lakers, we'd want to fire this guy, right? But first we have to know that that's his agenda. And the genius of Obama is that he can do exactly what he wants, but explain it in terms that throw us off his path.
If I'm a Lakers fan and the guy keeps losing, do you have to know his agenda to want him fired? No, you don't. 40% approval rating is astounding with this kind of record.
He's defying gravity.
Right. You have in the movie this amazing fact that Obama figured it out while he was in college, that people would want to help him if he put a mask on, right?
Yep.
Obama possesses in his pocket what can be called certificates of racial absolution. Now, I don't mean by this simply the fact that he's black, he's African American. That's not the key to it. The key to it is that he's a different kind of African American. He's not Jesse Jackson. He's not Al Sharpton. We're used to black leaders who make racial demands. You're a racist unless you pay me. And that has put America in a very defensive position. Here comes Obama, and he never brings the subject up. He's above it. He's the racial healer. So the point to make here...
He's not.
No, he's not, but the fact that he doesn't intimidate you with explicit racial appeals is immensely relieving to whites, because whites go, oh, wow, he allows us to believe that we've gotten beyond all that. By voting for him, see, I wondered to myself, why are all these guys like Chris Matthews? Chris Matthews is a hardcore guy. I mean, he grew up with Tip O'Neill. He's in the docks of Boston. He's a tough guy. But when he talks about Obama,
oh, he's got a tingle.
He says, oh, I got a tingle down my leg. He begins to talk in a very effeminate way. Now, why? Again, I think it's nothing to do with Obama. It's Chris Matthews able to say that by my supporting Obama, I'm patting myself on the back. I'm a morally wonderful human being because I can vote for this guy. So this is Obama's secret weapon. He disarms us. I think Obama wants to reduce America's footprint in the world because he thinks we're stepping on the world. So what he's doing is encouraging anti-American forces in the Middle East. He used force to push out Gaddafi in Libya. And he used diplomacy to push out Mubarak in Egypt. Now, what did those two guys have in common? They were both doing business with the United States. Gaddafi is no friend of ours, but he was behaving himself since 2002. Mubarak was probably our greatest ally in the region, not counting Israel. Meanwhile, Obama refuses to use force when there's massive casualties in Syria.
Didn't even bring up Iran.
There were... Iran, you had bigger demonstrations than Tahrir Square.
Yeah.
And Obama says, no, oh no, not only did he not intervene, he told the rest of us to be quiet, let's be calm, and all of that died off. So what do Syria and Iran have in common? They're deadly enemies of the United States, and they are allied with each other. So the only consistent explanation for Obama's double standard in using force over here, but not over there, pushing this guy out, keeping that guy in.
The name of the documentary is 2016. What does Israel look like in 2016?
If I were an anti-colonialist, I would say that it is not enough to have a Palestinian state. It's not enough to give the West Bank and Gaza back. Why? Because the anti-colonial view is that Israel itself is the little colonial power, the little American surrogate sitting and occupying Muslim land. So if I was an anti-colonialist, I would think, what is a clever way to get rid of Israel, to return the whole of Israel to the Muslims? Now, I think I would know the Jews aren't going anywhere, but I would think of ways like, what if I were to support a right of return for Palestinian refugees? What if I were to make it so that Muslims would be the majority in Israel? Then the Jews would be a minority in their own country, and it would cease to be a Jewish country. And I could achieve that result by demanding democracy. Everyone has an equal vote. Just as if I wanted anti-colonialism in the Middle East, I would demand that Saudi Arabia have a free election. I'd say, royal family, we've seen it now in Egypt. You put yourself on the ballot. You run against the Muslim Brotherhood, and let's see who wins that election. So we look at the Middle East. There are three important countries. There's Iran, there's Egypt, there's Saudi Arabia. Iran has been in the hands of the radical Muslims since '79. Egypt is in the process of transporting itself into the hands of the Muslim Brotherhood. Who's left? Saudi Arabia. So if the radical Muslims get that one, they have Mecca, they have Medina.
One more quick thing. You have a piece where show Barack Obama sitting with Medvedev.
The Russian president.
And he leans over and he's, listen, I need some more room here. I'll have more room to maneuver. Chilling, bone chilling. Medvedev says, I'll transmit the Vladimir.
And I stand with you.
Yeah, and I stand with you. What does that imply?
Well, that implies at the least that he has a hidden agenda. We may not know what that agenda is, but the clear meaning of what Obama's saying is he's saying, look, Medvedev, there are things I want to give you, and he's talking about missile defense in this case. He goes that if I were to tell the American people what those things are, they might not re-elect me. So wait, give me space, give me flexibility, his actual words, so that I can do these things after I'm re-elected. Remember, in the second term, a president is not tethered to public opinion. He becomes his own man. So weirdly, I think, despite all we've seen about Obama, we haven't seen the full Obama.
Do we, that's frightening, do we survive 2016 if he's elected?
Well, I think that we do not survive as, I mean, the risk is, will America still be a world superpower? That's question number one. The second is, what about America's wealth? Now, I mentioned in the film, this is directly from the Federal Reserve, American wealth from 2007 to now is down 40%. So that's almost half. If American wealth were to drop another 40% in the next 4 years, that would be a total decline of American wealth of 66%, not 80%, but 66%. America would cease to be a first world country, because this is happening at the time when other countries are dramatically coming up. Brazil, Indonesia, Chile, India. So America would essentially drop back into the also-ran of nations, which is to say we would be exactly in the position that the world was in 1500 before colonialism. There was no superpower. There were multiple nodes of influence. That's the world I believe that Obama wants.
He was born in another country, and we've had him on the show several times before. But this is the only man, I think, that truly understands Obama, because he had something most Americans don't, an anti-colonialist upbringing. This guy meant something that has changed since Barack Obama was in it, is that bust, which was a gift from the British, our closest ally and friend. This was a gift from the British as well, the Resolute desk. That bust was taken out and boxed up and shipped back to England. It was a gift after the attacks of 9/11. It was how it was done that bothered me and confused me. It was boxed up after the British Prime Minister said, no, Mr. President, that's a gift from the British people. And Barack Obama said, no, well, we don't need it. And he said, well, you put it in a museum. It was a gift from the British people. And what happened next was the Prime Minister left and Obama had it boxed up and shipped back. This is the key to the show tonight. This is where things for me, when they took it out of the Oval Office and they shipped it back to England, that's when things got confusing. That's where our journey begins. The only guy who I think gets it, and the key to him getting it, is Winston Churchill. This is an exact replica that we had made, and we actually had to call the chief historian of the White House and get them to send us photographs of it and measurements of it so we could recreate it for this Oval Office. This is what the Oval Office looked like when George W. Bush was in. It is dramatically changed, but the main thing